Hello, and welcome to tonight's preview of your Port Adelaide Football Club's upcoming match against the North Melbourne Kangaroos at Arden Street Oval on Sunday, 24th of August. The game kicking off at 12:35 Alberton Standard Time. It's just me tonight. I've just finished up the Patreon preview for our Port Adelaide men's game, and here I am continuing my first solo session of my CREEDCAST tenure. Dave's wife Andrea has been down from the US and they're spending some quality time with family tonight. So I hope they're having a great night. I wish them all the best. And we'll all see Dave back for our main show next week. So let's get into the AFLW game. So, team selection for Port Adelaide, we have coming in Lily Patterson, Chloe Gaunt. We've got Asher DeFore and Tiffany King, are two players who I'm not certainly familiar with, and I hope I've pronounced Ash's last name correctly. Outgoing Emily Borg, the very important Emily Borg, and equally important in a similar sense to how she looked to impact our midfield this season in Piper Window. Both obviously injured, which is very, very disappointing because both very important players, and we're all aware of our current injury list. So the injury crisis at Port Adelaide continues. Just reading from the Port Adelaide website, Port Adelaide has announced an extended squad for Sunday's clash with the North Melbourne Tasmanian Kangaroos, with two players set to pull on the black, white, and teal for the first time. Lily Batson and Chloe Gaunt will make their debut at Arden Street after being taken at picks 19, 48 respectively in the 2024 AFLW draft, joining Jasmine Soden and the Powers list of debutantes at 182 centimeters. Gaunt is a tall forward who developed her game through the Gold Coast Suns and Brisbane Lions academies and has been named in the forward line for the round two clash, while Patterson, a crafty midfielder known for her clean hands and impressive game sense, has been named on the Powers extended bench, which includes fellow potential debutantes Kobe Morgan, Tiffany King, and Asher DeFore. King and DeFore have been training with the side and have been included in the extended squad under the AFL's top-up player protocol, which is implemented when a team's list falls below the mandatory 23 available players, which is a sad, sad place to be in. They'll line up alongside Ebony O'Day, Maria Maloney, Kirsty Lamb, Jazz Stewart. This group of eight on the bench will be trimmed to five when final Sunday teams are confirmed Friday afternoon. As we well know, being a Sunday game, we do have an extended bench, so it is a bit of speculation. Obviously, form lines. All teams have just played the one, where we were unfortunately on the losing side against Freo at home, and North Melbourne just picking up where they left off for the last, what seems like forever. Um, so just the team as a whole, look, the players who are named on the field is a good starting point. So on the back line, we have Alyssa Brooke and Indy Tahoe, a good comeback from Indy Tahoe last week, as we spoke about in the review. Half back line, Sachi Syme, Tegan Jermack, Molly Brooksby, centre line, Sinead Goody, Abby Dowrick, Ella Bogue, followers Matilda Schultz, Ash Woodland, Ella Heads, and then on a half forward line, Juzzy Mules-Robinson, Gemma Houghton, Jazz Soden, and on the forward line, as expressed before, Chloe Gaunt, who's been named on the field, and Popey, little Popey. So, look, coming up against North Melbourne, they kind of are just taking all and sundry with them. Um, they're the by far and above the measuring stick of the whole competition. A very experienced team through age and games played, that is. I looked on the AFL app on my phone earlier, and the average age of the Port Adelaide side is 23 years old, whereas the average age of North Melbourne side is 26. So there's a fair discrepancy there, and it's no wonder why they continue to just roll on. It's why they are cool, calm, and collected under pressure. They apply a lot of pressure, and their system is a lot more bedded in and readily available to them on game day with some calmer, more experienced heads. But the road trip will be good for our girls. Obviously, yeah, in professional sport, it's well known that an away trip is good for team bonding and whatnot, and we'll need a lot of that. It'll be another huge test for us as we do look to get on the winners list for the 2025 AFLW season. Just off the bat, I'm not confident, but for the Patreoners who are listening to this preview, my sentiments are similar to The Port Adelaide men signed of late, but also their last game. I just want to see good representation from the players. I felt like there was some who obviously played well, you know. We actually found ourselves in a position to win, as we expressed in the review, but there was a few players who started a bit slowly for this season. So I'm looking from a lift, particularly from Shanae Goody. She's a diamond, and not in the rough is will be a weird way to say it. But I think a lot of us are expecting her star to rise even further this season with what she showed us in season 2024. She's a great user of the football and makes good decisions, runs really well, breaks the lines at her best, and takes 45. It changes the angles a lot, which is obviously helpful for cutting up AFLW defenses, which by and large have their deficiencies. North Melbourne, on the other hand, are fairly well drilled. So it is going to take a really good effort and a really solid application to the game plan. We saw more marks than we're probably used to last season in our game against Fremantle, which is a good sign because we're obviously going to need that to relieve pressure. I remember reviewing a game last season with Dave against Richmond, the first game that we played against Richmond, and the game was just played in sheer and utter chaos because we couldn't generate enough marks to relieve that pressure, and we were just sitting ducks for Richmond. Jasmine Soden, being her second game, I feel we didn't really touch on her much, if at all, in the review. Debut was okay. Um, from my opinion, at ground level, looked a bit apprehensive. Um, you know, just getting used to AFLW football, I suppose. There was still, I think she had about 10 disposals. I should probably have that up on my screen, but I believe that she had about 10 disposals, and she looked just the body language that you see and where players are looking to dispose of the football, I think was good. It'll be good to see her now try and apply, what she's learnt in her pathway up to AFLW football, because we are still in an interesting phase of AFLW where these young players can quite potentially come in and be the better players of their respective AFLW sides. Not to put any undue pressure on them, it's just the nature of coming up through a talent pathway, developing your skills at a younger age and being able to apply them fairly immediately. We saw that with Shanae Goody last year as a good example, and we saw that from Matilda Schultz the year before. While we're on Matilda Schultz, her job doesn't get any easier. She came up against Mim Strom uh, again, in our game against Freo, and I believe Kim Rennie is their ruck. And just like my sentiments with the whole side, she's quite experienced in age and always represents herself well. So um, Tilly's going to need a lot of support. I mentioned in our AFLW season preview that I thought Chloe Gaunt may get a debut in round one. That didn't happen, perhaps due to the outs that we have at the moment. She's got her opportunity now. I think she may need to spend a bit more time in the ruck because Alyssa Brooke took a few hit outs, took a few ruck opportunities last Sunday, but I feel that she'll be needed more in the back line, supporting Indy Tahoe and Tegan Jermack, specifically with some of the taller forwards that North Melbourne possess. And unfortunately, I am familiar with some of the North Melbourne players, but obviously Dave and I have expressed while we're quite settled on the Port Adelaide team, we are still learning about the broader AFLW competition. But North Melbourne's results speak for themselves, and the matchups, however they land, we're going to have our work cut out for us. So that's why I feel Chloe Gaunt will be required in an extent to support Matilda Schultz in the ruck, but also forward, because as we spoke about and as it's listed here, Ash Woodland is listed as a follower. she spent a bit of time on ball, but we spoke about robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that was kind of a rhyme there. So you're welcome. Um, so Ash Woodland being listed as a follower as well. I mean, I'm all for it, even in a perfect world with most of our best team available. I think it was once she kind of got implemented into our midfield rotation more last year is when our form started to rise. Correlation obviously doesn't mean causation. But I just feel that she has a good attack on the football, both at ground level and in the air. She generally makes good decisions. She herself probably let herself down in a certain regard with her disposal efficiency, landing at about the 33 or mid 30% against Fremantle. So she'll be looking to lift there because generally think that she makes good decisions and she brings other people into the game, which we'll need. However, spending more time around the ball means one less forward option, and that's where Chloe Gaunt could potentially offer a bit more assistance in regards to the aerial game coming up against North Melbourne because Gemma Houghton, again, something we discussed in the review, doing a lot of hard yards working up the field. But then, yeah, you're leaving yourself without scoring options. Julia Teakle and Caitlin Wendland being out is a serious impediment to our scoring this season. Last year, once we got into the season, provided a good spread of goal kicking opportunities, a goal kicking representation, and then yeah, Gemma Houghton is the barometer of our side. So when she's working up the field as well, it leaves the forward line without too many options. Caitlin Pope, obviously, chipped in with that goal. The captain, Justine Mules-Robinson, obviously acquitted herself as well as she could have, and no qualms with her. But we just don't want to leave it to too few, it's particularly in this game. That we're going to need an almighty effort from everyone to be even a sniff. The last two occasions we've played North Melbourne, we've got handily beaten. So a bit similarly to my sentiments with the showdown, just purely because we've played Adelaide Crows in every AFLW season so far. In the first 3 years, it's been about incremental improvement, and that has represented itself in a reduction of the margin. That's kind of where I'm coming from in regards to this game. North Melbourne being as good as they are, it's all about sticking to your game plan, checking the boxes, but for me, just making sure it doesn't get too out of hand. We looked like a team at the end of the line in the preliminary final, and again, credit to North Melbourne. Um, Playing in the heat, they just smashed us. We looked like we were out of petrol tickets. And then I think in the first game we actually played them in pouring rain in last year's season, but it still manifested itself to a big margin. So um, uh, that's that's the type of improvement. Putting on-field performance and the X's and O's of it all to one side, I'm just hoping that we can um, keep the balance across the 4 quarters and not let it get out of hand. Um, just going through the statistics from albeit from 1 week. So Kangaroos 294 disposals, and we spoke about disposals. We had the 224 against Freo, so a 70 disposal discrepancy. I believe it was about 40 to 50 against Fremantle. So we're still in the one official match that we've seen where it looks like we're trying to carry on a little bit from last year in a more direct way to goal or to scoring zones and opportunities. Um, we just need to be careful not to be too predictable because, like we discussed in the review show, it was our modus operandi in last year's season was the direct surge mentality. But good sides such as North Melbourne, Freo, another finals contender last year. Freo obviously did their homework, and I expect nothing less from North Melbourne to kind of set up at that their halfback line, our half forward line, set up a bit of a wall because we tended on Sunday to work the ball up to the center line and just kind of bomb it from there. And lovers of AFLW or keen watchers of AFLW will know that disposals that it takes more disposals to get from say the center line to goal. Even from 50 meters to goal, it's generally a two-touch score, as we kind of been exclaiming it. So I want to see more. How do I want to just being a little bit smarter when we get it around the center line, looking for an angle to get it within that 70 to 60 meter zone, and then pumping it into that 30-meter zone where we're a good chance of scoring. And alternatively, not letting North Melbourne get it into that inside 30s because that's what really killed us against Fremantle. Um, we all know where our team sits, but in saying that, the lineup is actually it's still got a lot of talent. The thing is that it's quite young and inexperienced as a whole still, um, in comparison, especially. So, like I mentioned before, Alyssa Brooke will probably spend a bit more time back and a bit more minutes on the ground. I think it may have been in that Richmond game that I mentioned before, last year, where she was exposed to some AFLW football. I think she played 2 or 3 games last year, and there was one game in particular. She led us for one percenters, and I believe they were all spoils. Playing in a back line, which showed just a small glimpse of perhaps what she's capable of, with a bit more time being a bit of a stopper, a key stopper. So she'll get a bit more experience in the back line, and we're going to need it. Again, another young lady coming up from a talent pathway with another full preseason under her belt. So it'll be interesting to see who she matches up on and how well she goes. Indy Tahoe, obviously being another support. Loved her game on Sunday against Fremantle. Um, Looks to be hitting the ground running in regards to this season. Obviously missing all of last year and most of the year before. So if she can pick up where she left off on Sunday, that'll be great. Like I touched on at the top of the episode, it's all some people had quieter games than what we would have expected. And for a lot of these players, it was, in my hopes, a lot of shaking off of the rust. They were just kind of below their threshold a little bit. So it's just some small percentages and some smaller or bigger than others that they just need to increase just to level it out across the whole ground. Obviously, the start had a lot to say with how the game unfolded. Um, Sacrificing 12 points pretty easily in the first quarter, against Fremantle made it a bit of a challenge for the rest of the game. And then once we did get back into um, uh, a lead grabbing position, we kind of ran out of tickets in the end, and then Freo kick away, and we discussed the machinations of how that kind of unfolded and that momentum shift, which we weren't too happy about. But you re rewind back to the first quarter and how we started. I thought we started sluggish, so I really want to see this team hitting the ground running because you got to put your best foot forward against a team like North Melbourne. Or we can't be sitting on our heels like we did a little bit, against Fremantle in those early stages. We can't give up early goals. We need to make it a bit of a slog. I haven't checked the weather though, unfortunately. So I hope it's a good game. We're heading into that time of the year where, yeah, the weather's picking up. Obviously, the men's season, it's yeah, heading into finals, and we all know, yeah, the sun starts to stay out a bit longer. You start to smell that fresh clipped grass and all of that. So I'm hoping it's a good day in Melbourne. I should have probably checked that before jumping on. But the fact of the matter is, we need to start well, but we need to make it a challenge for them and try, excuse me, try and restrict their scoring opportunities as much as possible. Excuse me. Just kind of dying over here all of a sudden. I've been talking for too long. Good thing I basically said all I wanted to say. Um, yeah, look, I, I could go through every player and their pluses and minuses. And like I mentioned, matchups are a bit hard just while we're learning the AFLW landscape as a whole. Um, just a couple of players to finish off. Kirsty Lamb, in Dave's best players the other night. I think she's going to need to have a bit more of a say in the middle, because she is one of our veteran players. And I mentioned our midfield rotation, excluding Maria Maloney, is quite young, with Shanae Goody, Abby Dowrick, Ella Bogue, Schultz. Ella Heads is still fairly young as well herself. Just quickly bringing it up here, 22 years old. So when you take out Marie Maloney, Ash Woodland's 26, so that helps as well. But Kirsty Lamb, I feel, will be required to have a big say. Contested beast, and a lot of marks as well, which is a key indicator of performance. We found, Dave and I, last season. And again, it was a focus and a point that I started off with as well. Um, I feel that if we're going to be competitive in this match, she's going to need to do a lot of work, grunt work, that is, um, uh, and not lead, yeah, and help out our younger players off, um, um, when we exit out of the center. Hopefully, getting our hands on the ball first. Um, I mentioned a couple of players. I really did only have Kirsty Lamb. I've spoken enough about all the rest. So look, time for a bit of a prediction. Look, if it has the possibility of extrapolating out. North Melbourne beat Geelong by 30 points last week. If we can keep it under that, I think that's probably par. Um, I'm not sure of any betting odds or anything like that, or lines. Obviously gamble responsibly. We're not sponsored by any bet whores, or betting agencies, I should say. But it's generally a good gauge of where they see it. Look, if we can keep the score to 30 points or under, I think that's a fairly realistic target. Obviously, I'd love us to win. That would be magnificent, and I would be jumping off the walls if that was the case. But yeah, look, the situation that we're in, and even if we do lose, I don't think it's the end of the world. We did start season 2024 off fairly slowly, and then we built into the season. Hopefully, we can get some players back sooner rather than later, although looking somewhat unlikely. But we just need to focus on this game. And if we can keep it to under 30 points, I think that will be a fairly good effort. One goal a quarter plus a quarter, with two goals more than what we kick. We managed to get some scoring opportunities last week. We just couldn't convert, and we were getting entries way too shallow. So flip that around, pose a challenge to North Melbourne, and look, just show a little bit of further improvement. We're all on this ride together. We're all enjoying what the lady pairs have provided, in the last, 18 months. If not since the start, to be honest, fairly harshly critiqued in the first couple of years, I think. But then, yeah, the the star has only risen for our girls, and I hope they continue to improve, in the same fashion. Um, I forgot to I forgot to bring it up in my Patreon episode just before. So I guess this gets tacked on here for everyone. But today, recording on the 21st of August, Thursday, obviously, the Isaac Rankin penalty has been handed out, and I am cognizant to the fact that this is a Port Adelaide podcast. So, um, for anyone hate listening, thank you for joining us. Could see it as a bit of point scoring, but that's not really where I'm coming from. Today's penalty, and I think it's still suitable bringing it up here because as one thing that I love, and one thing that's openly, expressed and welcomed in the AFLW competition is the LGBT plus community, and inclusiveness. And today's decision has kind of rattled me a little bit. Um, I don't know I do know what I expect. I expected the AFL to stay with 5 weeks. But just the handling of it all has just really kind of it has it's rattled me ever since I found out the decision. I've been a bit. I've yeah, it's taken me aback a little bit. I'm very disappointed in obviously the AFL as the organization running Australian rules football at a professional level. I'm obviously not disappointed in the LA Crows. I couldn't give a shit about that club. Um, I think it's obviously not knowing the machinations of it all. I think it's fairly poor form to say both you accept what he did was wrong and accept the penalty, but try and barter for a less severe penalty. But more centralized on the AFL, I'm seriously disappointed in the outcome and the process that they've followed. I think we're all on the same page in that we don't condone what Jeremy Finlayson said last year in regards to a homophobic slur. I definitely don't condone it at any stage in any form of life, let alone on the football field. But from where I sit, I believe we're all on the same page in the AFL saying that it's zero tolerance. It's not basically it's they have a zero tolerance. They've come out and said it themselves. Um, and that after the Finlayson episode, taking into consideration that he immediately self-reported, showed remorse, all of those mitigating factors, they gave him 3 weeks, but they said this is a starting point, and any indiscretion from this point on will face a more severe penalty. I thought we were all kind of on the same page there. And then we saw the 4 weeks, the 5 weeks, and Jack Graham this year, I think the most recent one before, Isaac Rankin, self-reported and managed to only get 4 weeks. Um, I'm so for the AFL to come to this decision today and hide behind and you know maybe in the um, sands of time after, in years to come, some more will come out about it. But to kind of seemingly hide behind these extenuating medical factors or however they phrased it, I think is a bit gutless. And I think it seriously lets down both the homosexual, queer, and gender fluid community, both inside and outside the AFL, really. The AFL men's competition does have a issue when it comes to the LGBT plus community and just by sheer fact that the competition has been around for so long and we're yet to have an openly gay player play AFL, which I think is a bit of a travesty in my opinion. I personally want people to live as comfortable and a happy life as they can without prejudice in any form of life. It honestly makes me feel physically ill to think of how gay and colored people to focus on minorities. It makes me ill how people which have been treated over the course of history. And when you feel like society is moving forward. And again, credit to the AFLW being so inclusive and celebrating this section of the community. But when you feel like society is moving forward, and then we get episodes like this from our kind of backyard and in our professional competition of our Australian sport, I feel severely let down. I feel that it's putting maybe not money because they're not gaining anything out of it to allow the possibility of Isaac Rankin to play in a grand final if they were to make it. And that's still, that's a huge ask at this point in time. There's a lot of chickens being counted. But I feel I'm yeah, like I said, I'm seriously taken aback by it and I'm seriously disappointed about them. They had an opportunity to further express their zero tolerance to this behavior and they've given the player at hand an out. And I don't care what anyone says. I understand I've played sport before, not at a very good level, I must admit, but in the heat of the moment in sport, you do things do come out of your mouth. But when it pertains to prejudice or it is a slur on a minority, either racially or in this regard, homophobia, I think there is an underlying prejudice to whoever says it. I don't believe for a second that you can just say it and be A, unaware of what it represents, or B, say it accidentally. Um, I just don't believe that for a second. And whether there's an an outward prejudice in someone's life when they say it, or whether it's just a matter of, oh, they've grown up their whole life and it's just been a curse word that has been normal, quote unquote. I don't think that's acceptable, and I think it's a prejudice that people need to leave behind in the past. We should have left shit like this in the past a long time ago. Like I said, I, I'm um, a a heterosexual man. I have a lovely partner and some a daughter and another child on the way. I don't have to walk in the shoes of marginalized groups, so I can't for a moment express any firsthand accounts or anything like that. But like I did say, I want everyone to live as comfortable and a happy life as possible because why the fuck wouldn't you want to do that? And I feel that the decision the decision by the AFL today has said has gone against everything that they wanted the AFL public and the broader public to. It's gone against everything that they want them to believe up to this point. Um, Isaac Rankin should be missing the rest of the season in any shape or form, and that should have come in a 5 game penalty. I don't think finals football should account for anything whatsoever, and medical conditions or not. The fact of the matter is, the AFL has put themselves on a pedestal as a front runner for eliminating social prejudice in some way, shape, or form. And they need to live that mantra. And I don't, and again, I don't think they have. And I think it's severely let down that section of society because when people seemingly allowed, Isaac Rankin is being suspended, but it's, I think it still gives bigoted people the opportunity to stay bigoted. I know I'm not calling Isaac Rankin a bigot, um, but from where I sit, I think in a small way, people who do hold prejudice have counted this as a bit of a win, and they won't come out and say it. But that's just how I feel today. I'm feel seriously let down, and I feel a bit shameful of the AFL. The way that the whole thing has been conducted, it's dragged on for way too long. I thought the same of the Jeremy Finlayson thing, and again, I don't condone what he said, and I think he deserved to be suspended as well. But I still think the AFL took way too long to come to that decision, like they have with this one. It's been a clusterfuck from the moment that the the news broke. Um, if there is any people from, I mean, any marginalized group, any minority, but more specifically in this case, the LGBT plus community, um, yeah, if there's anyone listening to the CREEDCAST, our pod, I'm kind of sitting on my soapbox today. I'm sure it'll come up probably again when Dave jumps back on for the main show next week. But I just want you to know that we're allies here. We love you all. Um, if you're equally disappointed and you want to reach out, then we're obviously always here for support. Um, but I think the heat should stay on the AFL to practice what they preach because I feel like they've seriously let down a lot of people today while backing down to a football club who, for some reason, felt it necessary to challenge. They've kind of, as Tom Rockcliffe has put it over the last couple of days, they were quick to suspend Taylor Walker for a racial slur and condemn that, but for what and they weren't competing at that point in time for finals, and now they are a chance to play finals and potentially go deep into finals, and all of a sudden trying to get what is abhorrent behavior reduced so that he has a chance to play. I think that's a fucking cop out. And look, I think I've kind of gone around in circles a couple of times now in this little bit. I should probably wrap it up, but I'm just seriously let down. And it doesn't affect, yeah, I'm not, I'm fortunate to have some sort of privilege in the world, and it doesn't directly affect me, but in some way, shape, or form, it affects my peers and potentially some of the people I love, while continuing to kind of shirking responsibility on the AFL's behalf when it comes to marginalized people, and minority groups. So, um, on the back of that, again, I'm sorry to anyone who may be listening and be part of those communities. I hope the AFL does better. I hope humans do better. Um, be the change you want to see in the world kind of stuff. But I think I'll wrap it up there. I think I've made my feelings known. I'm pretty fucked off, and I'm pretty sad. I'm pretty sad, to be honest. But that's it. To wrap back up, our AFLW ladies taking on North Melbourne on Sunday. I'll be tuning in. I'll be hoping that they put their best foot forward, and we see some good signs from our lady pair before we see them return to Albert and Oval. Um, Thanks for listening to the preview, and love yous. See us next week. Go the power.